am Barbara Wingo, the acting president and curator. Happy to welcome you to this major event, our grand opening. I would like to thank a lot of people, so you're going to have to bear with me. First of all, the city of Jacksonville, council members who have supported this project and have supported the funding of the actual renovation of this property. This journey, shall we say, started in 2002 when the city bought the property and is continuing on in 2007. Norman Studios Silent Film Museum Incorporated was founded. We are the group that runs the programs and the exhibits in this museum. It continued on to 2019, right before COVID, the funding of the renovation of this floor of this production building. And continues on with the purchase of the property next door, which was originally part of Norman Studios and contains the fifth building in this complete silent movie complex. A special thanks to our founders who are here. You can raise your hand or do whatever you want. Rita Reagan, Ann Burt, and Devin Stewart Leslie. Also to, I'm not sure Darryl Joseph is here today, but he has been, as the director of the Department of Parks, Recreation, and Community Services for the city of Jacksonville, he has been instrumental in pushing this project along. So I want a round of applause for him as well. Thank you to the members of the board of directors of Norman Studios Silent Film Museum, and I'm going to read your names. You can raise your hand or do whatever you want to do to be recognized. Dion Arlene, and please see her exhibit in the back. Janice Curry, Bruce Duggar, Daniel Forsythe, Jim Harvey, Gage Austin, John Holmgren, Ellen Island, Jim Kirkhoff, Devin Stewart Leslie, Jeannie Milton, Rita Reagan, and David Williams. Thank you to all of you. I want to also thank all of our donors, as well as the Norman family, for making possible these exhibits. Remember that we run the museum and all the exhibits and programs are funded by us, so we always are looking for donations. Right now, we have a Double Your Impact donation opportunity that lasts until September 1st. So if you give a donation, all donations up to $5,000 will be matched during that period. And it's very easy to do it. Just go on our website, push the donate button. We're going to begin, and I'll talk more about Norman Studios as we go along, but we're going to begin with the introductions by Dr. Jacqueline Stewart, who is the president and director of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences Museum in Los Angeles, as well as the host of TCM Silent Sunday Night. She is also a professor of film history at the University of Chicago and a 2021 recipient of a MacArthur Foundation Fellowship that recognized her for, quote, ensuring that the contributions of overlooked Black filmmakers and communities of spectators have a place in the public imagination. Here is Dr. Stewart.
I'm Jacqueline Stewart, Director and President of the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures in Los Angeles. I'm so thrilled to be with you today, albeit virtually, for the grand opening of Norman Studios' Silent Film Museum. This opening marks a true milestone, a labor of love and painstaking preservation that has been many years in the making. Now, I've long been fascinated by the cultural significance and history of silent films, the ways that filmmakers, studios were formed, and star systems were created, the nuanced acting in silent films, and the ways that audiences engaged during the silent era. But what's most fascinating to me, as someone who has studied Black film history for decades, is the active community of Black filmmakers who are creating independent silent films in parallel with mainstream silent film production. I can't stress enough how essential it is to recognize the accomplishments, the struggles, and the artistry of these early Black film artists and pivotal allies like Richard Norman, who produced so-called race movies, films that were intended for Black audiences during the era of segregation, and that featured primarily Black casts. And the fact that the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures recently had an exhibition called Regeneration, Black Cinema 1898 to 1971, shows the significance of the Norman legacy, because Regeneration, the title of the exhibition, comes from the title of a Norman film, Regeneration. And that concept of regeneration was so important to us because we wanted to point out how people like Richard Norman, that whole community of filmmakers for Black audiences, were building things that future generations of filmmakers, Black filmmakers in particular, would draw from. Now, Regeneration, the exhibition at our museum, closed recently, and if you didn't get a chance to see it, I hope you'll get an opportunity to check it out. It's moving to the Detroit Institute of the Arts, where it will be on view in February of 2024. We're so honored to recognize Norman Studios as a part of that exhibition. And we feel so deeply connected to what you are accomplishing today. This museum represents the sole remaining race film studio in the country. And we should just take a moment to digest the significance of that. The sole remaining race film studio in the country. You're elevating the long and historically sidelined tradition of Black filmmaking, for the Black community in the United States. And this is a history that demands to be known by film lovers, by cinephiles. Everyone should know the history of the Norman Studios and its incredible community because it's so significant to the meaning of American cinema. So I want to congratulate you, I want to congratulate Barbara, everyone on the museum team, and the Jacksonville community for preserving this cultural treasure. And thank you for urging us to think more deeply about the many strands of film history that have not been acknowledged before. Congratulations.
I'm going to start with introductions. So I want to introduce the members of the Norman family who are here. And we're going to hear from one of those grandsons, David Norman. Let's see if I get all these names right. We have Richard E. Norman III, grandson of Richard Norman. You are welcome again to raise your hand. This is going to take a while, so we'll hold the applause until I say all of them. David W. Norman, the grandson of Richard E. Norman, who's going to speak. His wife, Nancy Norman. Carmel Norman Sparks, who's the great-granddaughter of Richard E. Norman. Julia A. Norman, a great-granddaughter of Richard Norman. Dan Norman, another grandson of Richard Norman. And his wife, Kate Norman. Annabelle Norman, great-granddaughter of Richard Norman. Richard E. Norman IV, a great-grandson of Richard Norman. And his wife, Lona Norman. And probably this person cannot raise their hand, but we also have Richard Norman V, the great-great-grandson of Richard Norman. So now, please, raise your hands and clap. David, if you would say a few words.
It's very hard to say a few words about this event and what has happened.
Speak louder.
I think in the early days when my dad came by here and met with me and Bert and kind of started quickly standing out front of the building. At that time it was owned by Hugh Smith. And they started talking about what is this thing? And listening, took her heart up and realized the importance of this area and the buildings and the history of the Normal Street. So her early efforts were all over and were able to get the city interested in the property. Actually purchased. I guess on a side note, good thing is, Hugh Smith didn't sell it to Charlie the strip mall. So it's still here, which is great. And then after Old Arlington, Lawrence Studios organization was formed, and Rita and Devin took a decades-long journey to make the facility what it is today. And the current board, under the leadership of Barbara, has done a wonderful job of making this facility really good. And I want to thank all of them for that. I also want to thank the city of Jacksonville for standing by their side and seeing the importance and the interest for this museum will bring to the area and to the history of Jacksonville, the film industry, and also race industry. And lastly, I want to thank my grandfather, Richard Norman, who kept everything. Thank him for keeping all those documents, because he passed away when I was only 10 years old. I really didn't get a chance to find out much about him, what he did in his early life. But by rummaging through, archiving, and cataloging his materials, I found out what a true passion he had for movies and for race film, and for bringing the African American community back up from the segregation era. So again, thank you very much, and we look forward to the next phases. And don't forget, besides the studio, was it cool?
Thank you so much, David, and thank the family for their owning various items that are on view today for the very first time. I would also, before I introduce supporters from the city, I would like to note the Gateway RC Club of Jacksonville, who has provided the materials in the back, as well as Hector Puig of Hector Framing in Gainesville, who provided much of his time helping me with these rather large posters. So I now would like to introduce two of our supporters from the City Council. Unfortunately, Ken Amaro could not be here today, but I'll let Ron Salem and Joyce Morgan decide who's going to speak first. So go to it.
Thank you all so much. This is a wonderful showing. Yesterday was great as well. And when I walked in, I just needed to breathe, because it's been a long time. It's been a long time, and to have the Norman Studios in this position is wonderful. So I am Joyce Morgan. I am the immediate past city council member for District 1 in charge. Yes. And now I am your Duval County property appraiser. Don't get mad with me. Rita, my heart is filled with joy to see you today. So may God continue to bless you and continue to heal your body. I just want to say thank you to the Norman family. Oh my gosh, it's so wonderful to have you here. Just so wonderful to have you here. My journey began actually before 2015 because my husband knew Devin and had spent time with Devin and Ann, and he asked about you yesterday, Ann, and just wanted to make sure of all of the people that he remembered who were working so hard with the Norman Studio. I became a council member in 2015, but it was a little later that we identified that in our capital improvement plan, we had $1 million coming up for the Norman Studios, but it was in what we call the out years. So it wasn't gonna happen very fast. And we were able, my colleagues and I were able to bring that money up, and it was $1 million, and that's why you see this today. So we are so thankful. I'm thankful to my colleagues, to Ron Salem and all of the council members who were with me then and voted. They had to vote. You know, I can ask, but all 19 have to vote and make it happen, and they made it happen. And then I was serving on a Parks and Recreation and Quality of Life Committee, and we were able to get the other money so we could buy the church and bring this whole complex back to the community. Thank you for your support. And you know, what I want to say to Barbara is, please, everybody, a 2-for-1 deal, we all need to put a little something into this so that we can preserve Arlington's history. Arlington's history is so rich. It's so rich, but it's up to us to preserve our own history. Nobody's gonna come here and do it from Riverside. Well, maybe I might have to. Oh, that's right, Ann's in Riverside now. But it's really up to us. So let's band together and let's do this. And I just want to turn the mic over to my former colleague, who is our City Council President, Ron Salem.
Good afternoon. Like Joyce, she stole much of my thunder, which is fine. But like Joyce, just to see all the Normans here is just overwhelming to me. But good afternoon. As president of the Jacksonville City Council, I'm truly delighted to be with you this afternoon, opening the doors of these historic studios again. More than 100 years after Richard Norman began his work here means a great deal to me, to the Arlington area, and Jacksonville. As an Arlington resident for nearly 50 years, as many of you know, I live off North Caroline Road, bought a house in Colony Cove in 1983 and have been here ever since. I can remember when these buildings were dilapidated and housed various small businesses. Following the purchase by the city of Jacksonville in 2002, 4 of the 5 buildings' exteriors were renovated. Due to the significant impact these buildings have had on our history and the motion picture television industry, the City Council supported various appropriations, one of which Joyce mentioned, and a second one just more recently to buy the church for additional exterior and interior renovations. In fact, just this year, I sponsored a resolution to honor Rita Reagan, who I'm, like Joyce, I'm so excited to see her outstanding leadership and effort to preserve and revitalize this production complex. And less than 1 month ago, the City Council adopted the agreement to purchase the remaining adjacent parcels with the campus, which I think is so important. We now have all the buildings, and now it's just a matter of what we do with it over here. It's truly This is truly an historic moment for Jacksonville, and I appreciate being here to celebrate you this afternoon. Let me mention, Joyce and I am in my second term. She termed out, but we have always worked together in order to get funding for this complex. We're both, she knows I'm as Arlington as she is, and I wish Ken Amaro was here, but I know he's out of town, but I'm sure he will continue to push Norman Studios as hopefully 5 or 10 years from now, this will be just an area that everybody wants to visit. So thank you very much, and I'll continue to work with the Norman Studio people as we continue to develop this complex. Thank you.
I want to reiterate the thanks that we have for the resolution sponsored by Joyce and supported by Ron that honored Rita Reagan. That meant a lot to us as the board of Norman Studios South City. And we are so happy that you're all attending today. Please take the time